So hello again and welcome to today's webinar with Sales Intel and Data Sales Science about unblock your sales teams. For this presentation, we have our wonderful David Reed from Sales Intel and Mark Shalinsky from Data Sales Science. Sorry, Data Sales Science. Alliteration there, I can get that. So thank you both. Welcome for, welcome for being on here with us. I'm gonna pass over the mic to you guys and just hang out in the background and monitor the chat. So with that, take it away.
All right, well, thank you. I guess, David, you wanna go over the agenda?
Yeah, so for today, we've got an exciting and really important topic for each one of you guys. And really the first thing that we wanna understand is where and how your processes within your team, where things are being blocked. What are the problems that are preventing you from reaching the success that you're really looking for? Then how would you combat some of those issues and really rally your team towards the goal that you're working towards, whether it's a this year goal, whether it's a 5-year goal, whether it's an IPO goal. And then last, we're gonna go through some bits of advice and some strategy that we've actually seen to be really successful within both of our organizations.
Great. So kind of a segue on that. So in my organization, I'm speaking to lots of entrepreneurs, lots of companies, and usually I'm talking a lot about, what's, who are your targets? Who's your target audience? And at which point, I always ask them, it's like, what's your ASP? And the first thing they tell us is like, oh, it's all over the place. We can't really pinpoint it. And I always think that's a sign of a lack of maturity in understanding your targets and what you're looking at, because even though your ASP, your average sales price, your medium sales price is all over the place, you have, different ideal customer profiles that you have, and each one of them has a different average sales price. So for example, at Duo Security, you could say the average sales price was all over the map because we sold to small IT shops with 2 or 3 people. They would only buy a couple licenses, all the way up to Facebook, which had thousands of licenses. But we were able to segregate them into different swim lanes because we know that an SMB client of a certain industry had a specific average sales price, whereas an enterprise client of a certain flavor, they'd have a different one. So being able to know that portion, and then that kind of leads into, who needs your product? You look at Sales Intel, you're selling data of different clients for emails, phone numbers, you got the best mobile phone numbers, like everybody can use it. However, you can say, if you're targeting, SaaS companies where there's a lot of remote workers, that's a specific group that we're going to be targeting. And then of course, going to the next one of, who are the personas they're in, and being able to figure out who's the specific people we can talk with. Because you could say, yeah, everybody needs 2-factor authentication, but we're not going to be selling to the director of marketing. We're going to be selling probably to an IT director. So being able to have a certain level of maturity of your data, understanding which industries you're targeting, what's the size of industry you're targeting, who are the people in there that you're targeting, and be able to completely segregate it and segment your audience. That's going to be key for slowly figuring out how you unblock your sales team. Because the last thing you want is when you ask a BDR, it's like, oh, who are you selling to? Well, right now I'm calling a law firm. Now I'm calling a K through 12 educational system. Then I'm calling a publishing house. You get the best cold callers in the world. And if they're going all over the map, calling different companies, different personas, you're going to make their lives incredibly hard.
Yeah, and one thing on that, when you talk about your ASP, this was a really important trend for me and for the organizations I worked for to track and understand. And I really looked at it in buckets because, we all have a variety of different products that we offer. And so that's where the confusion tends to be, right? So in my previous organization, I had a product that was $199 a month. And then the bulk of our offering was probably in we would say between 1 and 6K. We tracked MRR instead of annual contract value. And so we tracked year over year that middle product, or what we would call like our SMB product, was $1,237. And then the next year it was $1,453. And then the year after that, it went all the way down to $1,100. And it's like, whoa, that throws off all of your numbers and all of your projections. And it was because we introduced a new lower price product in between our $100 product price product and our 1,000+ product. So really understanding those, and I would look at it in terms of buckets, right? If you have a variety of different products, having an enterprise ASP, having your mid-market or SMB, and having, if you have an SMB or a VSB target audience as well, really, really important. So that way you can understand, project, and really make sure that your team is going to be successful.
Well, that kind of leads to the next one, is because it sounds like you had a cannibalization of your audience.
For sure.
And it was interesting because that's something very similar. We did that at Duo, and we were afraid that we were introducing a higher tier product and a lower tier product, we'd have some cannibalization. But we didn't. We found out that even though we introduced a lower tier product, people never bought the lowest price point. They were always getting a little bit higher. But this goes into the fact of, when you have like I've built out these segmentation models that are very, very lean. And, some of the folks that are doing some prospecting for us, they love our lists because we tell them, we'll go into something like a sales intel. We'll say, we're only looking at a company that's got $1 to $5 million worth of revenue. It's a SaaS B2B company. It's in a certain geographic area, and it's got an employee count between 50 to 150 people. So and then we're targeting like a director of marketing. So we've segmented our list to such a degree that when it comes time for them to message, I think Wes mentioned, he said he called up this guy and he said, "Oh my God, were you just in my head? Because that was the conversation I just had with my CEO." And as much as these folks think they're special and unique, unfortunately they're not. If you understand the segment that you're targeting, you can hone into them. And this is where, Justin Michael's spear method of sending emails out, where you can have a pseudo personalized spear. You thin slice that really narrow demographic, and you can write a 3-line email that resonates with someone without having to do that personalization that says, "Oh yeah, you went to a university." Like, that if they fit within that thin slice, you don't have to have those thousands of people. You could have a list of 200, and and your only issue is actually reaching them. But the key is to segment. And I call it segment your industry, segment your ICP, segment your personas. And then you take all that data and then you start building out your swim lanes. You might have distinctly different swim lanes for different industries. SMB in manufacturing could be very different. So small, medium businesses could be very different from, in manufacturing, could be very different from software as a service technologies, SMB for those areas. The ideal customer profile, ICP is ideal customer profile. So typically,
we work. That's a good question. Thanks for calling that out, everybody.
Yeah. So we work on a variety of different levels. So first, you look at your ICP, your ideal customer profile. I usually call that the company demographics. So that's your annual revenue, your employee count, your geolocation, your industry, your SIX score, your NASIC score, all those things that are around the company. Then within your ideal customer profile, you're going to have the personas. These are the individuals that you're looking at. So you'll have, at a gross level, you look at different departments. You look at marketing, IT, sales, finance. And then within those, you're going to look at your seniority level. You're going to have, a manager, a director versus a vice president versus a C-level versus a board level individual. And if you can start segmenting your audience by industry, by company demographic, by persona, you could say, this is where we come to those lists that say, we're only looking at directors of marketing for some thin slice, highly segmented group. We can come up with pseudo personalized emails. And then you could go one step further. This is the ace move. You then go to Upwork and you tell them, look for all these companies that fit this profile. Find every single job ad that you found for the last 5 years of a company that fits this profile for someone looking for a director of marketing, and then pull out the roles and responsibilities. Now you'll have a monster spreadsheet of all the roles and responsibilities for one specific persona within the ICP within that industry. And then you can start whittle that down to 5 or 6 key points. Now you have all the information for the content for your email.
Love that. That is a phenomenal idea. And to echo your point, when you really start to understand your ICP and that ideal customer profile, who you want to target. So in the past, I targeted businesses between 1 and 20 million. And I targeted mainly owners, marketing managers, local businesses. And we would find out that once they got above 20 million, they would have most of the tech stack set up. So then it became this massive sale for us to rip out a lot of the pieces that they had, right? Versus the guys that are under $1 million necessarily really didn't have the dollars to allocate towards the solution and the software that we presented. And so that just kind of gives you one idea on why that ICP is so important, as well as when you start to really drill in and look at, I love the idea of looking at the job postings for those size companies, because you start to understand the language that they use and the specific verbiage that they have. And it's going to be slightly different for each industry and within each vertical. And when you can drop those subtle hints, I would use, write out all the scripts for my SDRs and AEs in the past. And I knew the language of the industry that we were talking. And so with me writing out the script and just the knowledge that I had from doing this for so long, I didn't go through this process that Mark has, which is much easier than what I did. I did it by getting hung up on for years. Once you started to really understand and dial that in, I could literally write out a script that my team would use, and the prospect would, I'd write in, here's what you say, here's what the prospect would say. And the prospect would say almost word for word, like the exact scenario that I had built out, because we really understood that, that information. So SDR is a sales development rep. So those are generally your appointment setters, if you want to call them that way. And AE is generally your account executive. So your closer, somebody who's bringing in the business.
So I just want to put a pin into what you said, David, about those individuals, those being able to get that script ready, because we're going to get back to that a little bit later. But it's once everything is down and segmented, because that's a good thing. That is key. It's once you have all this data, you go to the next level, because the first level is, what are the companies that I look at? What are the industries? What are the people within it? And now I want to say, all right, where do I win? Where do I lose? And when you talk about winning, you want to find what are the three types of wins. You want to see, where do you win fast? Where do you win big? And where do you grow? So it's interesting, because at Duo Security, using two-factor authentication, we knew we would win very fast if we dealt with law firms, because it was one IT manager, and that IT manager was managing a whole bunch of lawyers who were technically Luddites. They couldn't manage their data. They couldn't manage technology very well. And they said, great. And they would not care about price. So we knew if a law firm was coming in, it was going to be a fast win. So if the reps looked like they were going to miss quota, we'd say, this is your territory. Here's some law firms, go after them. Then you want to say, where do you win big? What are those big whales that you can win? And it's interesting. And what are, they're a little bit different. They require a little bit more strategy, maybe a little bit longer. And the last one is, where do you grow? And this was an amazing story from FatStacks. What we were initially targeting life science companies, because the founder was a PhD scientist. I'm a scientist. And we knew we go to labs and there's like these thick catalogs. So that's who we targeted. But we started looking at the data, and we saw manufacturing would come in. They'd ask for a $5,000 pilot. Like, they would go as cheap as possible. But by the end of 6 months, they were paying us $50K. By the end of a year, they were over 100, sometimes $250,000. So we would grow with those guys. So we pivoted the entire business to focus on that group, where we were able to get them in and then grow with that group. So it was very important to understand. And even though it was a low average sales price, initially, we knew that we can grow in there. And because we had a phenomenal customer success team, we knew we could knock it out of the park as soon as we got a toehold. And it was very important to figure out where do you win, how do you win, and being able to use your data to recognize that. And then you look at the flip side. Where do you lose? Like, is there someone that's always kicking your butt? And that's why FatStats got acquired, because we kept on kicking our competitors' butt, so they bought us. You know, you look at, is there a persona that keeps on scuttling the deal? I work with a company, Aisling. We re-architected their sales process. It's an ERP in the publication industry. What we did is we said, you know, they come into marketing because it helped do the outlay of newspapers. And so the marketing people would love it, but then it would go up to the finance. They're like, yeah, we're stuck on QuickBooks and we love our finance stuff. Like, we're not going to replace it because marketing wants a new widget. So we said, you know, if the finance guys are the folks that are killing your deals, why don't you go to them first? And then you tell them, show all the value to the finance guys. And then once the finance guy, they're saying, all right, let's show it to the marketing people. And of course, the marketing people are like super excited that you've got this awesome tool for them. And the sale would go quickly. And then the last one is the industry. You know, you always have the great idea that you have a good industry fit. But if you keep on losing an industry, it's like, it's a sign of madness if you keep doing the same thing day after day. Don't keep going after an industry that's just not want to buy. It's like, we all want to sell to cool SaaS tech companies, but if HVAC companies are the ones that are buying, that's who we're selling to. So I know all about dark fight and plumbing equipment.
And I know a lot about roofing and HVAC. I actually had to do a presentation at Carrier's headquarters in Indianapolis because those were the people that were spending money. But definitely to echo that point in terms of competitive blockers, that was one of the bigger challenges that we saw. Is anytime we knew that a prospect had this tech setup, we knew from a pricing standpoint, we were going to be asking them to 10x their budget. And I always told my team, I can generally get someone to double, maybe triple their budget. Anything beyond that is just almost out of the question. And so looking at, okay, what's going on with certain, you know, technologies that they have that might be an indicator to budget and whether or not they might be a good fit for you. But love the grow fast, because that was part of what we did when we introduced that product in between our $100 and our $1,000 product. We introduced something at $500 to help us increase our sales velocity with our deals and help us to overall grow our revenue for last year.
Yeah, no, it's always important to look at that data, because a lot of times what I find is that folks, first, they don't know what the ASP is, but then they don't really look. It's like, what is the velocity? And I've got a client that we're working with now, and I'm trying to get their data. And it's like, why is it important? Do we show when did they enter the funnel versus when did they leave the funnel, either as a win or loss? Because if you're not losing fast, you're wasting time. So, and that's, you know, my partner, Chris, will tell this. It's like, time is the one commodity no one's ever making more of. And that's the key, is like, how do we maximize the efficiency of time? If you have a sales rep, what's their load capacity? And figuring out what their load capacity is and saying, all right, when is it time to release this into the wild? To release this prospect back. And you know, and that's where you start leaning on your marketing team to start doing nurturing. And I think your partner Connect Leader is coming out with a product that'll help folks with that top of the funnel, because you want to get those people from top of the funnel, moving them down, so you're not you're able to get them going down a little bit more, which kind of
well, one thing on that before, because just to kind of give you guys an idea of I think how granular, if you can get to this level, how important this is we would actually build out our model, not just based on, you know, how many opportunities and how many meetings held or how many demos set, but I would actually build it out based on my SDR capacity. So that's our sales development rep. So essentially, how many phone calls could a sales rep make in a day, and how many phone calls would it take me to get an actual meeting booked? So for our organization, it was 35 phone calls to get a meeting booked. and then it was 63 phone calls to actually get a meeting held. So then you're able to build out this really detailed model, which is going to help you project, help your CEO, your CRO, whoever it is that you might be reporting to or working with, make them feel confident in the strategy that you've laid out, so that, hey, you know what, if I lose 2 reps because of whatever reason, due to COVID or due to the job market right now, that's going to impact how everything is performing, and really making sure that you understand, okay, how can I really benchmark this data to make sure that I'm going to be as successful as possible.
That's it's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because every time I join a company, the first thing I do is I develop what I call shadow ops, because they hire me to be director of inside sales, which is managing people, which I hate. I love managing the data, but to manage the people, I follow Mike Weinberg, Sales Management Simplified, where you train activities drives pipeline, and pipeline drives revenue. So when the BDRs show up, the business development reps, nice. Let's shout out to Mike.
Literally on my desk.
But you got to give folks a path to success, and it's like, these are the activities you need to do to drive pipeline. This is what you need to do to get a pipeline up to revenue. And as long as you have good coachable people and they're doing the activities, you will. The name of that book is Mike Weinberg, Sales Management Simplified. I'll make sure I get it over to Nicole. And it's always all about making sure there's that path of success. And then that's where you start adding those force multipliers. So, you're a partner with Connect Leader. This is where, if you're just using Salesforce and dialing, the reps can get about 50 dials a day in. You start using their Connect Leader sequence system, True Cadence, all of a sudden they can go through 5x faster. They can move over to agent dialing. Now you're parallel dialing 10 in an hour. I know, time is not my friend. Trying to build a business, I know when I've got an hour, I'm going to plop 200 leads into an agent assistant dialer. And I know in an hour, I'm going to either get through 200 leads or have 7 great conversations and probably book 2 or 3 meetings. Sometimes it's 9. That was like 3 weeks ago. It was, moving along, once you identify those swim lanes, your key thing you want to do is you want to, like, that industry segmentation. And I think we've already talked about this a little bit, like, what's the market segmentation versus the persona? Like, who are the different groups that you're targeting? Because life science works completely different from HVAC, which works completely different from education. They all move in a different manner, and they're not all treated equal. You can draw a straight line, and it's once you nail down the railroads to deal with one industry, then you set it. You don't forget it. You set it. You could put someone on it. You keep managing them, but then you start building on another one. And for each one, it could be a unique business unit. And then once you have all of your swim lanes built out, the next phase is you go and you build out your channel segmentation, because your leads come from a variety of different sources. And nobody articulates this better than Mark Roberge from Sales Acceleration Formula, HubSpot. Your inbounds are distinctly different from your outbound leads. Like, they are coming from completely different worlds. And the direct leads, it's like we rehearsed this.
Not showing off here to show off my book collection, but.
So David's only read 2 books. So just kidding. So and it's like, and each one of these are very different, and they work completely differently. And it's, how do you nail down, how do you have that communication between of the reps so that they deal with an inbound versus an outbound differently? Because if you start dealing with the inbounds as an outbound, you're going to frustrate them very quickly, and they require different playbooks. So one of the models that I build out is like a swim lane model, where I build out the swim lanes and I say, for this industry, here's your small, medium business, here's your mid-market, here's your enterprise, here's marketing. Is it channel or is it direct? For each market, how do we deal with the channel versus direct? Okay, when they come in and we start talking to them for the qualification, how do we deal with this if they're inbound versus outbound? When we come to, then we go over sales. Who runs the demo? Who runs the, I think I have a competing call going on in the next room. We're all attacking the Death Star at the same time. And then when it goes to closing, who closes those? And then customer success, how are they renewed? How are they upsold? How are they working? And then you segment them completely. And because an upsell for a channel renewal works differently from an upsell from an outbound sale. So because an inbound, they might have a good idea what you have, but you never know if they've known all the values. Like just before this call, I asked Ariana a couple of questions about your product, even though I've been using it for a while. I'm like, oh, you do that too? I know someone who's looking for that data. So, I keep asking those questions.
Yeah, no, you definitely want to echo the segmentation in terms of, one, how you're handling those opportunities that come forward, because inbound versus your outbound strategy, totally different in terms of your sales pitch, the way that you're, going after them. And also typically what we see is also there's a significant difference in terms of the size of the opportunity. Generally, when we're working outbound opportunities, in most cases, they're generally larger because our team is prospecting into who we believe are our ideal customer profile that are going to give us the biggest bang for the buck, versus our inbound, which there's a little bit less control that we have over those opportunities, right? Where they might be shopping and they might be looking at other competitors that are out there in the space. So they're probably a little bit more educated, and you're probably having a more specific feature and benefit driven conversation about what are the differences between us and some of our competitors, so that they can really evaluate that. So definitely agree with that.
All right,
that
we're gonna test the library here. You just mentioned what's it called? Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross. You got that book next to you too? Come on.
I hold on, give me a minute. I know it's here somewhere.
The only person that's read more sales books than I have is Justin Michael. He's got so I got a shout out to Combo Prospecting, which was his first book. And the book that's coming out is TQ. I can't remember but it's all about essentially what we do is building sales cyborgs. How do you make awesome reps and layer technology on top of them? I don't. Sorry, I didn't mean to. If you had that one right,
I can't find it, but I do have it, but I can't find it.
That's the whole secret of Salesforce, is that outbound model, is because predictable revenue happens when when you've dialed into this kind of helps sum it up, and we can drive to the last slide, is once you've identified your segments, you've identified the personas, you know exactly what to say and who to go to, you could just pick up the phone, send out those specific emails, and start going after them, and you have a predictable revenue. Because whereas inbounds, you got to do a lot of scrubbing, and they might come in with a bias. The outbounds are the ones where you're approaching them, and you have a chance to base first. And the person who bases first is typically, so base, you layer out the price. The person who lays out the price first has the better chance of getting as close to their price as possible. Sorry, little negotiation tip there. Say your price first, and then you're typically able to get that to get in that rate. So the key is we want to find out, are your reps talking to the best people? This goes back, it's like, are they, if they're calling too low, they're calling to managers and they got to get sign off from the VPs. If they're calling too low, that's a much harder sales cycle as opposed to calling the C-level, getting them engaged, and then they say, all right, you've got to talk to the manager. If they get sign off, we're coming back up. We've already got sign off. What are the most lucrative market segments? So once you've segregated everything and you could start running these experiments with these thin sliced lists, you can then start saying, all right, which ones drive revenue fast? Which ones drive big revenue? Which ones are faster? Which ones are slower? How do you use the numbers? How do you layer all the stats on it? And the stats aren't even that hard. Like, if anybody follows the stock market, just use simple stock market stats, use running means, use some averages, median sales price. You start running those numbers, and then eventually things start to move in predictable patterns. My favorite is you do an envelope. So you figure out what's the variance off of some of your sales data, and then you can see, what's the average sales price. You can see we're typically within that envelope, and we know we're on target. At Duo,
Mm-hmm.
Duo Security, my last job was looking at the revenue, and we would see a dip. The CEO would say, "Oh, we're having a dip." I'm like, "No, we're still within the envelope. We're doing fine. It's variance within the data because it's up or down." And once you have all of that, then you got to start. Remember, we took that pin in that OneNote way before about your rep and being able to have good talk tracks. Then we want to line up your rep to win. I really have to thank Rob Turley from White Rabbit Intel on this one, because while I've been doing this in the past, he articulated very succinctly. You want to find out where your reps are winning. Are there certain reps that are lined up with certain industries? That's how you make a super rep. Because, we had this one rep at Duo Security. She was doing all right. And then we put her into education. And then Diane just started knocking it out of the park every single day. And it's like, Diane, you moved from, 50% win rate to like almost a 90% win rate. She's like, "Oh yeah, I used to work at ProQuest, which dealt with the education industry." She understood the people she was talking to implicitly. So when you could start drilling down these data lists, and you say, "All right, here's these lists, and we're getting our reps to go all over the map." First they're here, then they're here, then they're here. You say, "They really win over here." You could chat with them. Say, "Hey, seems like you got a much better win rate with HVAC. Like, any ideas?" And then you might find out that, yeah, their dad works in manufacturing, and they've seen this stuff for a long time, or it's their hobby. And it's like, "Oh, great. Let's just put them onto that industry." And once you start lining reps up with their success paths, then people tend to win. It's like the age-old adage. It's like, if you're in a territory, make sure you get the newspaper from that territory so you understand. It's like, "Oh, I'm calling out to Montana. I know it's snowing out there right now, even though I'm sitting in Ann Arbor. So I'm going to say, yeah, sounds like it's really cold out there." I'm relating to them because people want to relate to humans. So that's my final point. When you mentioned that, have that script, like, use that data to find out where your reps are winning and create those super reps that are segment aligned and industry aligned.
For sure. Absolutely. I don't know if it makes sense for us to open it up to questions now. I see there's one in there already. You want to start?
So Kirian has a question. What's the best way to apply this if you're looking for your first customers? Then you do something, you go hypothesis driven. You say, where do we believe that it fits? And this is what I did with my company. It's like, I believe that I fit over $1 million worth of revenue. You've got over 5 employees, and you're below a certain threshold. And then you start running a hypothesis. You say, I'm going to find a very thin slice group. I'm going to get, a list of 500 people that fit that slice. And then I'm going to see how well it works. And then I'm going to benchmark that, A/B test that against a different very thin slice segment. So I might say, I'm only looking for tech companies between $1 and $5 million worth of the revenue that are between 50 and 200 employees, and they're B2B tech SaaS. All right, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to say, all right, let's say now we look at e-commerce companies. Okay, let's do another thin slice of e-commerce. I say, great, I've sent out a sequence of emails, and this is a whole other story about how you set up sequences and emails and phone calls. I send out a sequence of emails. You run a campaign. At the end of those 2 campaigns, where did I generate the most interest or revenue? At which point you say, okay, now the one that won, let me find other thin slices that are like that are similar. And now, did I do better or worse? If I did better, great, let me go further up. Did I do worse? Okay, let's go back and let's figure out how we do backwards. But it's all about testing with as thin a slice as possible.
Yeah, one other thing I would add to that is, especially when you're this early on, I would be reaching out to your personal network that you have, past individuals that you've worked with that you believe are in the target audience. So for example, if I know that my solution is going to help people that are in finance, right? I would be reaching out to my past finance directors, my past CFOs that I've worked with, I would be reaching out to people in my network. Who in my friends has someone that's connected with a CFO that I can talk with, and really see about getting time on their calendar to understand their industry, understand what's important to them, what drives them, and then use that information to craft your messaging with the hypothesis that Mark had just talked about.
So just to kind of elucidate, I was working with a group, Systematic Ventures. What they have is they've got a product that helps folks identify, does a variety of things for the investment group. But what we did is we just ran discovery calls from accelerators, angel investors, small VCs, large VCs, family offices, RIAs, and PE firms. And then after having a whole number of discussions, always trying to sell the product, we pulled lists and fired out emails and called. We came up with a strategy that said, all right, we know what the base pricing is that they will all accept. We know how much we want to charge, and we know the issues on each of them. So now we're moving to phase 2. We're saying, all right, these are the targets that we want to go after. So we did all that discovery, and we've also built the pipeline. So unfortunately, we have a bunch of smaller fries that will slowly move through on the initial phase, but we understand what the pains that they have. But then we also have some larger deals that are in, and we say, great, we want to double down on those guys. And now we're going to start hunting after them. So we start with a hypothesis driven. Let's just go have a thin slice of each one of these different groups. They're all the same. And then tabulate all the data. And now that we have all this data, we're going to say, great, now we're going to get even larger lists in these groups.
Awesome.
I think we answered all the questions in the universe.
I love that, Mark. And I love everything that you guys have been talking about, because, and I neglected to introduce who I was at the beginning of this. I'm the director of marketing at Sales Intel. So I love where you guys are talking about, it really starts from the top. So unblocking your sales team, it isn't just about the processes of, do they have the right tools? Do they have the right, it starts from, are we giving them the right target? Are they on target? Which is why I love your background, and I told you to turn it back on. Huge Star Wars nerd. I love that. But it looks like we got another question come in. So we'll let you guys take that one.
Well, I think that's more of a David comment.
Yeah. So how do you speak to the reliability of the data that you are given? So I think a lot of it is, one, just monitoring it closely and over enough of a period of time to gauge whether or not there are massive fluctuations within that data. So when I took over my team in the past, I had been in the role for 7 years, so I had kind of had a good understanding of where my benchmarks needed to be. And then I just created that running tab and updated everything on a daily basis for me, as my team was making calls, as my team was figuring out who we were selling, what was our deal size per industry that we were selling into. And that really helped us to better understand who we wanted to target and where our team was going to be the most effective to make sure that we're, at the end of the day, crushing our revenue goals.
Yeah. So do you
so we got another question here. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Do you engage with physical products sold to customers? So, well, I would just say, sure, because you could sell physical products, but talk to them over the phone and then ship them something, because that's what Amazon does every day. Happy to chat with you later, David, to uncover the need here, because there's that whole thing of like, I got the face for inside sales, so that's why I do everything over the phone. So people don't, I got my digitally enhanced hair over here sitting in the X-Wing. But, getting that in-person thing and glad handing, that's like the enterprise sales world where folks come in and they, get that kinesthetic feel, because there's 3 types of personalities out there. There's the auditories who like to listen to things. So you'll notice them because they use a lot of words that are auditory. There's visuals who, they have to see something, they like pictures and they use all these visual cues. And then there's the kinesthetics, the ones that have to touch and feel something. So this is why brick and mortars are almost never going away, because people always need to walk in and actually, there's a certain third of the people have to go in and actually physically touch them. So happy to talk about that. And it's curious, you know, and that's one of the cues. Like when you're talking with someone on the phone, particularly doing, you know, inside sales, it's important to ask folks, you know, after that call, it's like, what's the best way to reach you? Sometimes I'll be like, yeah, just give me a call. Other people like, yeah, send me an email or send me a text, or, you know, and there's folks that love getting those, you know, video recordings, like Vidyard does a great job. I think BombBomb Video, don't want to alienate any one vendor. They do a good job of sending videos, but it's all, and like trying to figure out what someone is, if they are, you know, if they're a visual, auditory, or a kinesthetic. Because a kinesthetic, you can unstick a deal by sending them something in the mail.
Direct mail marketing and sales touches is very much alive. There's something to be said from getting that piece in the mail, because used to be it's like, oh, I got more mail. Now it's like, oh, I got email. If you get a physical good sent to you, it's like, what era is this?
Oh, I got two for you. Number one, send a fax.
Oh my gosh.
Number two, similar, you know, oftentimes you get stuck up by a gatekeeper and they're like, oh my God, it's you again. You call it every week. They get used to you. It's like, all right, I know I'm bothering you. So what if you take a picture of the Post-it note on the computer of the person I'm trying to reach, back when people went to offices, now that people are starting to go, I'll send you like a $5 coffee card. And that ensures that your message is getting across. And that's one way of getting around, you know, don't really get around a gatekeeper, but you're making them part of the team. And then if you were going to send a gift, you can even call them up and say, hey, we're sending a box over for Joe, for your boss. I just want to make sure that I want to send you the tracking number. And by the way, you know, I've got a coffee cup in there for you as well. And that ensures that, you know, we're getting something in front of them as well.
So this is my favorite thing that I've done and that I've created. This is my old company logo. And so it's actually a real can of soup. And so what I would do when I would have an agreement or a contract that was close to the finish line is I would literally overnight them this can. And on there, I would put a little sticky note that says, when do you want to open this up on the competition? And always got a response every time. It was an expensive strategy, but at the end of the day, if you've got a $50,000 contract and you're going to make a good amount of commission on it, it's probably worth it.
Well, if you understand your LTV and your CAC, your lifetime value of the customer, and the customer acquisition cost being the total sunk cost of sales and marketing to get that customer, you'll know how much you could spend to acquire them. And you know, this is what we did at Fastback, because Rusty would send them an empty iPad box, and he was like, if you want the iPad, accept a demo with us, because we knew what it was required.
That is awesome. That is great.
Cheaper way is do a Cameo. Cameo, anybody know about Cameo?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how you get a celebrity. Yeah. You pay a celebrity a nominal fee, and then they'll be a shill for your product. So you'll get like Mike Tyson stand up and like, or Bruce Buffer, it's time. You've got to go buy some sales data from Sales Intel. And
awesome. All right, we've got a couple more questions and I'll add this up here for you guys to look at. And we've got two on some hiring questions, but I also have this, which I love. It's my round to it that I was gifted as well. So like, hey, whenever you get around to it, come back and talk to me.
Love it.
That's so punny and cheesy. But yes, so we've got two questions around hiring. So one about training. So how would you train a new SDR or a sales development representative? And then when you're hiring a salesperson, permanent or to summer intern, what is the best advice you would give to someone who doesn't have a lot of experience in that? So who are you looking for? How do you structure your process? And then how do you train that person once they're here?
Train someone who likes to fall down a lot and get up after they fall down. David, you want that one?
So a couple things that I look for is one, so I used to be notoriously ruthless in like my interview process, and to the point where like I think I almost made one kid cry. I made one, it was bad. We're not going to get into all that. But what I would encourage is, you know, one, definitely somebody's got to have some thick skin in order to be in sales, for sure. So I definitely agree with Mark's point there. Two, I look for people that have that work during their you know, high school. Like if you're hiring a fairly junior person for an intern or that summer position, I'm generally looking for people that worked during school and high school, are working or actively engaged throughout their college. If they're going that route, I'm looking for people that have really good attitudes. I'm looking for people that are quick to respond. So one of the things that I would was my interview process for all SDRs. As soon as they sent me a response saying that they were interested in the job posting on Indeed or wherever it was, I would immediately write back. I had a canned response that says, you know, thank you for your interest. I like your background. Please send me an email and pitch me like you would if you were pitching my product, and send it to me by the end of today. So by 5, so I'd give them a specific time frame. So that one told me, okay, are these people, one, can they think on their feet quickly? Two, are they proactive in terms of looking at their, you know, phone? Are they going to be engaged, or is this a lazy person that's not going to get back to me for a couple of days? That strategy alone typically weeded out about 50% of the people. And then it was asking them good interview questions. I found personally that the most successful reps for me are reps that ask a lot of questions. So generally what I'm going to do is turn the interview over to them fairly shortly into it and see how many questions they have. How much preparation did they do? Did they look at my LinkedIn? Did they look at the company? Just basic research to see, you know, is this going to be a good person?
So,
and then the hiring, you want to take the hiring, or I can take that one as well if you want.
oh, well, one of the other things that we used to do is we would say, all right, you know, they get through the first round. It's like, all right, your next round is with, you know, the VP of sales, or you got to talk to the CFO. Here's his number, and you just say, here's the number. And they would be told, yep, this kid's going to call you, and don't answer the phone. Let's have him with a voicemail. And, you know, if they call you twice, you know,
I love that. I forgot that. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one.
So we get to hear their voicemail, and it's like they leave a voicemail. It's like if they only leave one voicemail, you know, and they never call back, we're like, guy's not persistent. It's like, you know, it's a barrier test, because you want to get that persistence level. Because, and the other thing is, like, you always say hire athletes for sales jobs, because athletes, it goes all the way back to Mike Wainberg's, like, activity drives pipeline, pipeline drive revenue. You know, in wrestling, my coach made me do 1,000 duck unders, the most mindless movement ever. But, you know, you get into that groove, and it's like, I know that I can do it anytime. And it's like, I've got this fast reaction, because you're just doing the same. It's the same thing. Like, you have your script, you pick up the phone, and if you're confused what you're going to say, it's going to sound garbled. You know, you've got to have your script down. And I would say, if they had Rev Garage, hopefully I'm allowed to say them, they have these cold call competitions. And there's a number of folks out there who are, you know, they're cold call masters. I got to shout out to James Townsend. He is so awkwardly smooth on his call, because when they do the agent assistant dialer, so there's like a quarter second or less blip between him and the connection. So he goes, oh, hello, oh, sounds like the line's crossed. Hey, this is Jason Townsend. Then the name pops up. Hey, David, I'm reaching out to you because you're director of sales with Sales Intel. I just want to call you about agent assistant dialing. Got 27 seconds so I can tell you why I called. But he's so awkwardly smooth. And it's funny, you watch him for an hour and he does that 14 times. Every time it's the exact same words, the same pitch, the same tone, like perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great way to
I would definitely echo that.
Go for it, David.
I definitely echo that in terms of one, giving them the collateral, right? Do not just expect that you're going to be able to give the SDR a list of phone numbers and a little bit of product information, they're going to be able to go off and do their own pitch. You want to kind of give them as much guidance as possible. So I have scripts for pretty much every possible scenario. I have scripts for all of my objections. Not that I anticipate that, nor do I expect them to use everything word for word, but I want them to have those resources there available for them. So when the problem does come up, they can, okay, you know what, oh, I didn't prepare for this, but now I've got this problem. I know how to respond to it. So next time I'll be ready.
Well, I call it, everything's kind of like jujitsu. You practice the individual moves, and that's why it takes so hard to go up, because, you know, you have to know the basics so that when you end up in those terrible positions, you know, you're never going to be able to apply the perfect armbar or the perfect triangle, but you're able to position yourself to get into that move. And it's, so we did this at FastAx. Nate helped me. We pulled down data from something like 600 cold calls of conversations. We started distilling the most common objections. And eventually we got down to the last 15, and Nate looks at it and says, no, you're almost there, but let me shorten it for you. There's only 3. The 3 key objections: send me some stuff, I'm all set, or I'm a special unicorn, this won't work for me. And we had this kid, Ed, and Ed was just horrible, but we coached him so well on the objections that he would get the objection and he'd be like, oh, you're telling me send me some stuff. Yes, fantastic. I got a marketing team that can blow up your inbox like a DDoS attack. What kind of stuff you looking for? Oh, you're a special unicorn. Well, that's why I called. Flip. And then he would read off, my research has told me A, B, C, D, E. Is this not true? Yes, fantastic. This is how we can help. Or, oh, you're all set. Fantastic. Most companies in your place are not set. How are you currently solving this? And they would come back to him. But it was amazing that he was so terrible at the actual conversation, but once he parroted back to them what the objection was and be able to flip to the script, then he was able to answer the question adequately. So you give them that flexibility. So we're
definitely
5 minutes left. What do you do to sum up?
Well, we had 5 minutes like 20 minutes ago. I'm just super psyched that all these people are still here. You guys have some great knowledge for them.
Well, it's all David's library.
I mean, we can keep going. All right, so this one also on the deck. Highly, highly recommend this one. All right, my if I had to go top three favorite, Jordan Belfort, Way of the Wolf. Great.
The audiobook for Jordan Belfort. I would go for the audiobook because a lot of what he does is tonality. So you got to listen to him. You got to listen to how he says it.
So I'm so ADD that I actually have to listen to the audiobook while I'm reading and like writing notes within and like underlining the book. So that way it actually sticks in my brain. Last highly recommended book is Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss. Great books. I can put all of them in the
that goes all the
Slack
way.
channel.
That's a good ending point because that goes all the way back to negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's it's interesting. Yeah, good collection. So yeah, and when it comes out, TQ, it's all about using tech-powered sales because that's what we do. It's just how do we use technology to help your sales reps shoot faster, run faster, shoot straighter.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
All right, we've got 2 more questions and 1 comment. I'm totally going to read this out. Thank you, Michael, for this comment. I'm a brown belt in
BJJ and a wrestler.
BJJ and a wrestler. Mark is a stud.